Well, welcome back to another episode of Keep Standing. Excited to have you sharing with us today. Well, listen, before we begin, as always, don't forget to like, share this particular content. Let us know how it's impacting and encouraging you. And then we want to make sure that others get a chance to hear as well. Well, I am so excited about today's guest. Today's guest is a longtime public servant. He's a respected voice in Texas politics, and he's a leader who spent decades advocating for communities that are often overlooked. He's known for his commitment to justice, equity, and opportunity. And what I've come to appreciate is that behind the policies and the platform is a man who cares deeply for the people and the community he serves. Today, I'm excited to welcome Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. I'm sorry it took so long.
Oh, man, listen.
It's an honor to be on your podcast.
I'm so grateful and really appreciative that we get an opportunity to share with you. You've always been somebody whom I've admired since I've arrived in this area, but your commitment to the people is extremely commendable.
Well, I've been lucky. You know, I sometimes tell people public policy is my ministry. And I'm just honored that folks have trusted me all these years as a city. I started off as a student council president at Worthing High School on the south side, and then on the city council and the state senate for a number of years, and now as a Harris County Commissioner.
And also a graduate of Texas Southern University.
Proud graduate of Texas Southern. I was joking before we started. I started off at Xavier in New Orleans my freshman year, and I took a summer internship for the United Negro College Fund. Summer 1973, they decided to establish a permanent office for the United Negro College Fund in Houston. Xavier's a UNCF school. TSU's not. They had a big luncheon at the Rice Hotel. At the last minute, they said, we need a student to say something for 1 minute. So, somebody who was a former debater, give me 1 minute, all those people in that room, so I carried on a little bit. And I'm told the president of Texas Southern was in the audience, and Rod Page, who was then the head football coach. So that's what led to Rod Page having somebody reach out to me. They flew me to Houston, and gave me a football scholarship. But my job was to be the assistant director of promotions and development for the athletic department. I had room, board, books, tuition, provided I maintained a B average. Maybe they paid me, I don't know if it was $300 or $500. I've been looking for that telegram from Rod Page. But
well, they first off, let's just say we just provided some information that you may not have known, and that is that Rodney Ellis was actually a football player.
Despite the way I look, I think I did maybe go on the field once or twice, but not to play. Also tutored athletes. So Rod Page, ahead of his time, before there was a requirement, wanted to make sure that those young black men didn't just go and play football, because we know the odds are that most of them will not end up in the pros. So he wanted them to maintain a certain average. So one of my responsibilities was to tutor the athletes as well.
Well, the legendary Rod Page.
Yes.
Listen, so you've already started kind of getting into that, and I want to talk a little bit about, people know Rodney Ellis in public. We know you as the leader who has served as a representative and now as a commissioner. But who is Rodney Ellis behind the scenes? How would you describe yourself?
I think fairly normal. Grew up in Sunnyside. Father had a sixth grade education. He was from Central Texas, so he was a yard man and sometimes I say nurse's aide, but he was an orderly. He also had a little repair shop in the backyard, tool shed. He'd repair lawnmowers, bicycles. My mother was a housekeeper, a maid, and also a nurse's assistant or orderly. She worked at convalescent homes. So the last of three children. And, I was lucky. Well, we stayed in the same house until I graduated, but just working class family. Blessed with opportunities to get a good education, starting with Xavier, which was a good experience. Here's a footnote in history for you. The first president of Texas Southern University, when it was Texas State University for Negroes, was A.E. Norton. who was the highest-ranking African-American in HISD. Didn't have a PhD, master's degree from Southern Cal or USC or UCLA or somewhere. So they made him the interim president when they opened Texas State University for Negroes, pulled him out of HISD until they brought in their first president. Mr. Norton told me, he said, Rodney, I think you're a bright guy, I was student council president, but he said, you have talked your way around a lot of these teachers and entertained your way out of high school. And he said, you need to go over there with those nuns. I'm Baptist. You need to go over there with those nuns. Won't care how much you smile and all your joking, and you learn something. Because he said, boy, I think you could be something one day. So I chose Xavier, although the other schools gave me more money.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to Howard.
Yeah.
I dreamed of, being on the steps of the Howard Law School with a Thurgood Marshall sweatshirt on. But Mr. Norton said, you go to Xavier, and I did. And it was a good experience. Yeah. St. Michael's Dormitory is still there. Norman Francis, who died not long ago, was the longest continuous president of any university in the history of America. Like 50-some. He's the first lay president, 50-some odd years. But it was a great experience for me. Yeah. And when I came back to Texas Southern, that was wonderful. First of all, it helped me financially tremendously.
Critical.
Being the last kid in our household. But so strong TSU ties.
Yeah. Household of how many?
Three kids and both parents. Okay. 5 people.
All right. So your siblings, though, your number of siblings was 3.
3 of us in total.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is one of those questions I've been wanting to ask you. We know, again, Rodney Ellis, and I've seen your work up close and personal, but when we talk about your public life, I got an idea, but who are those people, 2 or 3 that really influenced who you are today and how you serve, how you show up?
Growing up in that household, we had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. They added a bedroom for my sister, Melody. We didn't have enough money to put in a hallway. But so my brother and I shared the same room. But we grew up working, struggling. I'd do yard work with my dad. But I was always interested in politics. My mother was what I would describe as a town crier. My daddy, I didn't really know Elijah Ellis could talk that much until my mother passed. Very strong, determined black woman. But, she had a lot to do with my interest in public service. There was a big controversy over the dump site, Sunnyside dump, which made Bill Lawson. That's what put him on the scene. It was the protest over closing that dump. Yeah. But, my minister, Hoxie Perry at Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church, I was always impressed with the way I'd see him doing yards on the weekends, and then on Sunday morning, dressed up, French cuffs all the time, in the pulpit, his ability to persuade people. But, I grew up watching Martin Luther King. Yeah. Obviously much older than me, not old enough to participate in the civil, but I watched his movement, which is in part why when I came out of Woodson, so Grimes Elementary, then Woodson Junior High School back then, I took 2 city buses. Houston didn't bus. 2 city buses to go across town, downtown, to go to San Jacinto High School, which is now the main campus for the Houston Community College. But I did that because Martin Luther King was stressing that blacks should get into white schools segregated. I think when I went to San Jacinto, maybe about 20 of us there, and I was there for a semester, got kind of active with some of the protests. We were protesting for more black studies at University of Houston, host of other things. And then I ended up transferring back to Worthing, in part because the assistant principal explained to my mother he thought that if I stayed in that integrated environment, I'd become a militant. So he thought I'd be better off in an all-black environment, which I resisted. But when I did get transferred by force, my mother transferred me back to my neighborhood, to Worthing. I blossomed. Yeah. A debate team, student council president. 1972, my senior year, on prom night, we were out hanging up signs saying Bill Hobby. Hobby Airport was named after his father. Bill Hobby would make a good lieutenant governor, honestly. And we were helping Sissy Farenthold, first woman, to run for governor. Back then, Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Symphonia Thompson were running for the State House. So I got interested in politics real quick.
All right. So now you're there. So now we transition. Here you are in public life. You've gotten, as a representative, and I'm sure that there's a number of other scenarios in which you were sort of introduced to public life. But what was that defining moment, where you said, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is how my voice is supposed to be used for the city of Houston.
In grad school, I went to Austin. When I got out of TSU, go to the OBJ school. So I started interning around the Capitol for Bill Hobby, who was lieutenant governor. And so I got to watch Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Anthony Hall, all those folks in the state house. And there weren't very many staffers on the Senate side who looked like me. So I stood out a bit. Only one on the lieutenant governor's staff. The guy who would drive the lieutenant governor around was there as well, and a receptionist. But it's a good experience. So I'd watch all the Black Caucus activities, the fights that they'd go through. And then I ended up getting a job when I got out of law school as Mickey Leland's chief of staff. He didn't know me, but I knew him. But I ended up getting a job as his chief of staff fairly young, 26, 27 years old. So I went to Washington as his chief of staff and his roommate. So I'd say it was his impact watching his brand of politics. Shirley Chisholm was in her last term in the House. Augustus Hawkins was in his last term in the U.S. Congress, that Humphrey Hawkins bill. So it was a great time. And then when I ran for city council, there were older people, I guess like I am now, primarily on city council. There had a couple of younger ones. Kathy Whitmire was mayor. But I ran with Congressman Leland's blessing. That's how I won the seat on city council at 29. And I just kind of, I always gravitated to public policy. I've been blessed to have instincts sometimes when issues come up and have good mentors like Leland, like Hobby, to have known Craig Washington, Anthony Hall, to have watched them early on in their careers. Because when I showed up as an intern around the Capitol, they got there in 72. I showed up in 75. So I've been lucky along the way.
So you're talking, almost well over 50 years now.
42 years in office, not the same office. City council 6 years, 26 years in the Senate, now 9 years here. But it's been a good ride, one that I've enjoyed. Hope it's not ending soon, but obviously all things change at some point. And I practice law. I've had to start a couple of businesses. In my case, they were jobs that didn't pay a lot. State legislature was an honor and a privilege, but it was a $600 a month honor. So I had to practice, and I started a public finance firm as well.
So, you're doing these things, and now really, getting into as a public official, and you're leading. Let's dig deeper as a leader, because again, we see you all the time. We see you showing up. You're there, but there's a cost behind this, and that oftentimes many people don't know. When we look at those in the public light, we look at officials, elected officials, but don't realize that there's a cost. What is that cost that you tell somebody, hey, you better consider this, because this is going to be a part of this role?
Well, I always tell young people who are coming up, well, even if somebody's older and want to get into politics, obviously the profile is something that you enjoy sometimes, but there are times when you tire of it, when you just don't want to go. You just want to be alone. It's time away from family, from your spouse. I've been told that my children are really wonderful people. I can't say I really know them as well as I would know them if I was not in politics, and just the passion that I have for it. But so I hope for the most part that fairly normal. I think that my wife has done a great job. I'm in my second marriage. So my first daughter, I have a great relationship with her. But I would say it was probably more on her mother, who's a doctor, who really took most of the brunt of raising her. And Alicia and I, my wife and I have been married for almost 30 years. We're coming up on 30 years now. And she works as well. But she's just done a great job of keeping the balance. It was probably even tougher when I was in the legislature because I'd have to go back and forth. I remember when Commissioner L. Franco Lee passed away, and I pulled together a family dinner, which was rare, And the youngest was sitting there, I guess she was maybe in the 9th grade or so, something like that, on her phone, wondering why we haven't dinner. And so I said, well, I think I'm going to try to become a county commissioner. And she said, well, what do they do? So I'm trying to kind of walk through it. And I remember she said, well, will we keep our office up at the Capitol? I said, well, no, sweetheart, by the way, that never was our office. Yeah. You know, it's the people's office. She said, okay. And then she said, well, do you know anybody can get us into the rodeo? I said, well, I
what
think,
are the perks?
You know, maybe. And she said, well, what about our apartment in Austin? I said, well, no. I signed a 3-year lease to save money, but I'm going to try to figure out how to get out of it or sublet it. But I'll be in Houston. Then she went, what? You know, so it's sort of like, you going to be here? Yeah. So I was thinking they'd be happy that I was home. But I think she was thinking, no. We don't want you. So I'm sure that it has cost me in terms of time with my family. It's a price that you pay. And I always tell people, if you're interested in politics, it's a very strong calling, but there's a price that you pay. And financially, you know, I'm sure that if I decided to do one thing full time as an investment banker or as a lawyer, I would have made far more money. But life's been very rewarding for me in terms of the impact that I've had on public policy over the years.
That family piece is big, you know, and anybody in any area where you're leading, you know, you got to recognize if you're going to be out there in public and you're taking certain mantles, there is a cost that oftentimes has to be paid at the back door. Yeah.
But and the lack of privacy. And, you know, when somebody criticizes you, I mean, look, you know, obviously my politics is pretty progressive. Yeah. So I get my enemies along the way. You know, if I assume if I just went along to get along, it would be okay. But that's not my nature. If I feel strongly about something.
Well, then let's do that. Let's deal with that. I want to, you know, because, you know, your voice really resonates, and you've got to take certain sides sometimes that are not, you know, always popular, and sometimes may not even be comfortable. Well, I guess they go one and the same. But you know, how do you determine? You know, is there an inner tug where it's like, if I say this, if I go this way, it's going to be a cost, and then what makes me decide that I'm going to go ahead and do it?
You always have that thought that I may anger the wrong person or what impact it'll have on me. But, you know, issues like criminal justice reform in particular, I think that is the civil rights issue of this generation. And when I took on the issue of bail reform, I knew I'd anger a lot of people. I knew in my heart that it was right. I'm not sure I really appreciated just how angry I would get them. But, you know, I did. I was chairing the Board of Innocence Project when I was in the Senate. They wanted someone from Texas, and we were being pretty effective in my office at passing criminal justice reforms, meaningful reforms in a fairly conservative state. So Barry Scheck and Peter Nofel out of New York met with me and said, "We want to put you on the board." When they decided to spin off as a separate 501c3. Then I get to the first meeting, and they said, "We'd like for you to become chair. You ain't got to get the votes on the board, but we think we can help." So I did that for about 14 years. So I did meet this guy who sued Harris County. He's going to sue Travis County over bail reform system. And I said, well, sue Harris County. And he did. And then when I became a commissioner, I'd gotten the DA at the time, by the way, to agree we needed to reform this bail system. You ought not just stay in jail because you don't have money.
Right.
I thought they said innocent until proven guilty, which are my misdemeanors. I got the sheriff to do it. One guy was running for judge, former intern of mine. Judge Darrell Jordan. He's running for clerk now. And he was the star witness in that case. So I didn't feel right putting him out there without me taking a public position as well. So I did an amicus with the Legal Defense Fund nationally, and all hell broke loose. But I think it was the right thing to do. On I got your help when I was pushing for minority business enterprise policy. County should have done it a long time ago. We hadn't done this disparity study, and you were helpful. Yeah. Came out to your church a couple of times. It kind of stirred up. That Harvey Bond issue was coming up with the flooding on your side of town, every side of town, but your side in particular. I appreciate you standing up. I was putting that heat on when I was the only person of color, and only Democrat by myself. Yeah. What I found, it helps me to take on tough issues because I don't do it by myself.
Yeah.
I think that if I have a following and people believe in me, I have to give folks the sense that I'm not out there by myself. So I try to spend some time figuring out the messaging, like this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I think I've been fairly effective, I hope, at using the media.
Yeah.
Bill Lawson.
Absolutely.
On creating the public defender. You know, I always tell a story. I remember when their house was bombed. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but when their house was bombed, we had that old black and white TV with that little screen you put on there with 3 colors. That was your color TV. If nobody messed with the tape, you got your color TV in that home in Sunnyside. And I remember when their home was bombed, and my daddy said they messed with the wrong one now. We need to get out of here and go up to Central Texas because the city might blow up. Well, we didn't go, and the city didn't blow up. But I learned a lesson when my dad said that to me. The lesson I learned was get allies. And if I can't get other fellow elected officials, don't get out there alone. Get the people with you.
So what is that? You know, you're out here making big decisions. You're leading. You've got to develop allies. All these things go into, you know, leadership in difficult times. What does that feel like? How would you describe how that feels on you when you're making these kind of decisions that you know are going to affect thousands of people?
Dr. Sloan, in my case at least, faith helps. I don't wear my religion on my sleeve. I always joke about getting that C in theology at Xavier, you know, and I think it's because I was one of the few Baptists in that class. That's what I tell my classmates. But you know, if I feel strongly enough about something, you know, I'll take the position. I try as much as I can to use humor, or I try to carry myself with a demeanor where I don't push somebody so far in a corner I can't get them to help me on the next issue. I'm talking about a fellow politician. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And so far, it's been all right 42 years. And I'm sure you can tell by even when you visit with me. You know, as a kid, I was diagnosed with ADD. So if I have to do one thing, it's a real problem. If I'm juggling, you know, what helps me, sometimes people wonder how you get in so many issues. I'm really better if I'm juggling. As a state senator, if I had 5 or 6 bills coming up the same day, you know, it's a sense of satisfaction to see how many of them would level. But if I just have to do one thing, that's a real challenge. So, look, I mean, I'm pretty much that way with my politics. So you learn something about me every day. I don't drink. I don't touch caffeine. This is decaffeinated tea. So if I have caffeine in me, or I think if I were to drink, it would exacerbate the problem in terms of that attention.
So in many ways, that's almost like a strength for you in the place that you serve. You know, I'm at my best when I got multiple things going on.
You know, it would be like I always admire pastors. So if I'm giving a speech and I think I got it going, if I see someone who has to get up and go, a trigger goes off. Am I going too long? I'll shorten it. You know what I mean? So it's an insecurity there. But so, yeah, you know, it's something that you just, we all have issues. I tell people, you know, like as an example, you know, being a pastor. The greatest fear most people have is public speaking.
Sure.
And so when I was on the debate team, they would tell me, just look above their heads. Well, I never did that. I look in their eyes. So when I'm speaking, if I'm carrying on an issue, I'm communicating with who I'm talking to. Worst mistake, I look them in the eyes. And if the eyes get shifty, if I think I'm losing them, then I'll switch the subject to get them back on what I want them on.
Well, you open this door. I want to ask this question. Are there certain fears, you know, that politicians have that you know, sometimes we think that you're immune to, but no.
Most of us are fairly insecure individuals.
Everybody has some.
You know, I could remember every article that has been written about me. May not remember who said it. I can remember what they said. Now, look, I'm big enough to know. Just get over it. Sometimes I have to remind people, you know, in politics, how we'll just get angry over something. I'm sure there's some constituents who been mad at me so long. If they remembered what they were mad about, I might say, well, I'm sorry. But they don't remember why they're mad. So as an individual, I have to always tell myself, work on being more secure.
Yeah.
So it's all right if somebody doesn't like me. They might be right. If they disagree with me, that's the possibility. My position could be wrong. But no, I would say that insecurity. Most of us in public life have our feelings that we don't show it.
Yeah.
We got to be strong on the outside. But no, we, like anybody else, we lay up at night and wonder, how did we do? Why was that man or that woman so angry when I shook their hand? What did I do? And then you figure out, wait, you know what? It's okay.
Thank you for saying that, because somebody's sitting there saying, oh, wow. So even somebody who is known so widely and is such a public figure still deals with some of the same things I deal with. Insecurity. I say that often from the pulpit. Yeah. Everybody has some insecurity. It's just it's a matter of how we manage it internally. So you talk about that also impacts how you engage with people. I mean, because you're in the community. So people are seeing you, and what they've just discovered is, I'm really concerned about how you feel when we talk about certain issues. That's what I just gathered from that.
I'm passionate on issues that I care about. Now, look, I remember my background. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I have to tell people, don't let these 3 degrees fool you.
Yeah.
Even when I'm dealing with department heads, I tell them, look, I didn't get out of Sunnyside. You Google my neighborhood, and I've never had a problem. Yeah. But, the stats is considered in the top 5, sometimes number 2, sometimes number 4, most dangerous neighborhoods in the country. So now I tell people, now don't now, I do have an ego too. Don't right. Clown me. I brought clown into town. You know what I mean? So now, and it's a battle. I said, don't bring that other
right.
Rodney out. He's in there.
Yeah.
And I'm doing this at 3 degrees, a whole lifetime. Say, Lord, forgive me, Lord, forgive me, Lord, forgive me.
Don't
but
push.
that other Rodney is in there.
Right. Sunnyside, we'll come out.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, all right. So, man, that opens up so much. I want to circle the block. I want to come back there. But, when you look at some of the things you've led through, was there one like big thing that you said, man, that was probably one of the toughest seasons of having to lead, whether the city or the state in that role?
I can think of a number. I'll give you one early on. Back when I was on city council, the police workers did what they call a blue out. They wanted a pay raise. Tremendous financial challenges for the city of Houston. And so they would get a note from their doctor and not go to work. They were ill. But then they came to the city council meeting to protest with the guns, everything lined up. And it was pretty effective, really. So then the garbage workers decided that they would do that as well. Small problem. They didn't know to go get a doctor's permit. So they left the trash out there in the streets. And the mayor, Kathy Whitmire at the time, fired them. The ones that didn't show up, large number, just fired them. And you can go find folks you're going to go and find scabs, go out and find folks to pick up the trash. And so Reverend Lawson, Congressman Leland, young councilman, newly elected council member Rodney Ellis took on that issue. And, forced the mayor to back down on it. And it's one I didn't know it was going to go. I remember there was a meeting at the mayor's home, and Bill Lawson was there, and they had all of the ministers in there. Mayor said something to him, and that other Rodney came out with some colorful language.
Sure.
And Reverend Lawson reached over and touched me on the back. It's like the hand of God.
Oh, the Christ.
And I calmed down, and then when we were leaving, going back to my house, I was driving. I had the congressman and the rep in my car, and I said, Reverend Lawson, I want you to know I know I shouldn't have done that. I am a Christian. But the other lady, he said, well, Rodney, sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways. Because about 10 minutes after you cussed the mayor out in her own home, she agreed to hire all those workers back but the 4. Then I'd say the other big one for me was the hate crimes bill in Texas.
Yeah.
We had that, we had a lynching up in Arlington. I can't remember the guy's name now. Young widow was a great witness. But I put that bill in when I went to the Senate in 1991. It didn't pass until 2001. We named it the James Byrd Hate Crime Act.
Yeah.
But that was a big battle. Every session of the legislature would blow up over that bill for a decade. And in 2001, it did pass. That was a long battle, a tough one. And we got that passed, and a number of other issues came out. But I just say it was such a defining issue.
Yeah.
And such a challenge to pass that hate crimes bill in Texas.
Was that one that you would say kind of really got to you emotionally? Was there one, or is there another that you say that one was probably one I was more emotionally invested in?
I'd say the one that I was most emotionally invested in was something called a Michael Martin Act. I took on a lot of criminal justice reforms, but it was a discovery reform package. And this guy's about my age and spent something like 30 years in jail for a crime he did not commit. And it was the first time in the history of America a prosecutor, he'd become the judge by then, prosecutor in that county, Williamson County, right outside Austin, ended up going to jail for suppressing evidence. But now that case just really, to imagine this guy, he happens to be white, lost his wife. She was tragically murdered. He was convicted of doing. They took his child from him. His child, they changed the name, and his son, grew up thinking his daddy murdered his mother. And all those years, there was a CNN documentary about the Michael Martin Act. That one was one that really did just, touch me deep inside, and that has helped a lot of other people to get out who were wrongfully convicted, and it keeps them from suppressing evidence. But I'd say that Michael Martin Act is probably the one that emotionally touched me the most.
Well, that may be a good segue into this question, and this is obviously the big one. How do you feel about politics today when you look at the landscape? I don't want to dial you into just Houston or Harris County, but when you look at the landscape of politics, how do you feel today?
Obviously, it's important, more important now than it has ever been. It's become a lot more divisive, and that's such a challenge. In a lot of ways, we drive it. You have social media. Everything you do, everybody has a comment on it. The lack of confidence in real media, because there's so much fake media out there. Anybody can go out there and, appear to be a reporter. And, the advent of AI, Chat GPT, when you don't go check the sources and see if it's right. Somebody says it and it gets out there. But with that said, it's just so important. Now, on the positive side, let me tell you something. Be worthy of a podcast at some point. I am so proud of what Ghana did at the United Nations. And they have forced that vote to essentially make the point that slavery was just the greatest crime in the history of the world against humanity. And that was just such a powerful thing. And I think of the history of Ghana going back to, they got their independence first with Kwame and Nkrumah. I always think of the tie-in here. John Biggers, head of the art department at TSU, took that UNESCO trip to go to Ghana in the early 50s. First time an African-American artist went to Africa, spent a couple of months there. That inspired his work, the great work when we think of John Biggers, all come from Africa. But so it shows you there's always a glimmer of hope. Was the rollback on DEI programs, wars all around the world without getting the public to go with you. A person in the White House who just takes the power, no checks and balances, and they just let him get away with it. That makes it important. And I hope, my children and your children, other folks, there's so many people that I think are so well equipped to get into politics, but won't get in the arena. And it's just so important in terms of what we do.
Yeah, that's a good one. I want to talk about that. One of the things I've kind of advocated for is starting to teach leadership and even developing some form of political astuteness from the church. Here's why. I think that if we start teaching our young people in the church how to run for campaigns, if it's student council, student government, we get them in their schools, middle school, high school, then maybe we start getting individuals who recognize the power of their voice, and then they run at their universities, their colleges for student government, and you start getting Stacey Abrams and Raphael Warnocks, and you start getting Christian Menefees and these younger group of leaders. When you think about young leaders today, how do you feel about those voices that are coming up?
I feel very good about them. And you mentioned Christian Menefees, one, Daryl Jordan that I mentioned. You look at my way of trying to help mentor the next generation. when I worked for Mickey, he started a Mickey Leland professional internship program. I was his roommate, which helped, but I was so young. I didn't know what I was doing. I was general counsel, special counsel to one of the members of the Texas Railroad Commission. Only person in the office that reported to me was the secretary. And she had been his executive assistant long before I met him. So she didn't report to me either. 4-person staff. And the congressman gave me an opportunity to be his chief of staff. Maybe about 17 people. When he got a subcommittee chair, maybe about another 6 people. I go to Washington to do it. But he started this internship program. He told me to go raise the money. He said, we need more young people like you. We're going to pay them, put them in other congressional offices. Well, I started a similar program, kept his going when he passed away, when Craig Washington was there, when Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee went to Congress. Maybe I did it 1 year or 2 years. Then I said, you raise the money. But I started the Texas Legislative Internship Program. And I've done it now since 1991. About 1,000 people have come through it. 3 members of the Texas House, Pollard, young one on city council, 4 judges here, a woman who is the comptroller for the state of Maryland. There have been so many, I can't remember them all. Turns out we kept her in my office, but she was the state rep in Maryland. Now she's the comptroller. Judge Jordan, there are about 4 other judges here, 1 federal magistrate. They're all over the place. And it's my way of encouraging. I started off being all black and brown. I decided to open it up. We brought in maybe about 20 from South Africa, a couple from Brazil, maybe about 4 or 5. But it's my way of mentoring young people. And I always tell folks that one of these days when I lose, if I keep putting my name on the ballot, one day I'm going to get a whipping. It won't be the end of the world. But I hope it's somebody with a brain who has learned the art of politics. That I do know.
So if you've got some young person out there, who's following in a Rodney Ellis footsteps, and but maybe they're stuck right now, what are you going to tell them, about getting out of that, or how to keep going, or what's your hopes, ambitions, encouragement to them?
So I always tell people, some who have run for office, by the way, Barack Obama didn't wake up and just decide to run for the United States Senate. He ran for the Illinois Senate, which is no way comparable in power influence to a Texas Senate seat. A seat in the Texas Senate, you represent more people than you represent in Congress. Only 2 states have it like that, Texas and California. More people in the state Senate district than the congressional district in those 2 states. But if it's the school board, and then I tell people, figure out how to do as much as you can where you are. Yeah. I think I made being a Houston City Council member a bigger deal than it was planned to be. I think I made being a Texas State Senator a bigger deal than it was intended to be. And I think I made being a Harris County Commissioner a bigger deal. It's kind of what you do with it. Yeah. And sometimes you got to make chicken salad out of that other chicken, But I tell folks, and be patient. I have not defined my life by just what I do in elective office. That investment banking firm was, if you considered it a black one, it was the 4th largest one in the country when I sold it. My partner for about 8 years was Hispanic. If you considered it a Hispanic one, it was the 2nd largest one in the country. I ended up with the biggest law firm in the world, the Denton's law firm, as a senior advisor for a number of years. Had the opportunity to represent Mexico. And now negotiations to pass the North American Free Trade Agreement. Represented Southwestern Bell when they won the tender in South Africa to modernize the telecom system in South Africa. Then represented them as AT&T. SBC became AT&T when they divested. So you got to figure out how to get as much out of life. When you think about it, life really is short. And I think, at least for me, I try to measure success by whether I made a difference in my public life, in my private life, or in my professional life. And you don't find happiness. Look, I love bike riding, just so you know, that's the other side of me. Now, that's therapy, by the way. I listen to books. I listen to gospel, particularly when I'm tired and I want to stop. But, physical activity is a part of mental health as well.
Sure, sure. Well, perfect entree to you said one day, your name's not going to be on the ballot, and Rodney Ellis is, kind of decided to make an exit. What do you hope people will say about the legacy of Rodney Ellis when you've concluded your public life? What's that hope that they'll say?
I hope that they'll say that I made a difference. When I was at the LBJ school, one line of LBJ's that I really love is that he said when he was contemplating what next move he'd make in the civil rights era, being pushed by Dr. King and a host of other great civil rights icons, but a great line that I use all the time. What the hell is power for if you don't use it? So in my case, I hope that I will be remembered as someone who took whatever influence I had. If I had power, I didn't sit back and wait until I'm looking at it in the rearview mirror and talk about what I wish I could have, would have done. But I've had power every step along the way. I've tried to use it to make a difference for the people that I represent. So at the end of the day, I hope they'll say he did his best. I may not have always agreed with him, but he was cunning. He was entertaining. He tried to be polite. But when he had the ability to influence something, by God, he used it.
Wow. Well, I can tell you what I'll say. I'll say Rodney Ellis showed up for the people. And you've done that, and you've done it well. And I think all of us are better because of your voice.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and I'm just so proud of what you have done with your ministry.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're grateful that you paved the way, and we appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm grateful. Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation, how deep this has been and encouraging. We're grateful for his voice and vision. And hopeful that you'll make sure you share this with others. Tell them about this conversation, especially some of those young aspirants who may say, I may want to peek into that window of politics. Until next time, keep standing.